At sunrise on December 7, 1941, the waters of Pearl Harbor looked calm enough to mirror the sky. Sailors leaned on railings, some laughing, some finishing coffee, unaware that history was already racing toward them at hundreds of miles per hour. Within minutes, the sky would fill with aircraft, the sea would burn with oil and fire, and the United States, a nation that had tried for decades to avoid global conflict, would be forced into a transformation that would change the balance of power on Earth forever. What followed was not just a war effort, it was the creation of the most experienced, technologically advanced, and globally influential military force in human history. The story of American military power did not begin in World War II. It began much earlier, shaped by geography, ideology, and necessity. The United States emerged from the 18th century as a young nation born in war. Its Revolutionary War victory against the British Empire was achieved not through superior weapons or numbers, but through resilience, alliances, and strategic patience. This early experience established a lasting principle in American military thinking. Wars would not be won by strength alone, but by a combination of logistics, innovation, alliances, and industrial capacity. Throughout the 19th century, the United States military remained relatively small compared to European armies. The country was protected by two vast oceans, and its primary military engagements were internal or regional, including the War of 1812, conflicts with Native American nations, and the Mexican-American War. The Civil War from 1861 to 1865 became a defining moment in the development of American military organization. It forced the country to mobilize millions of soldiers, develop large-scale logistics networks, construct rail-based supply chains, and industrialize weapons production. By the end of the Civil War, the United States had gained critical experience in mass mobilization and technological adaptation, lessons that would echo decades later. After the Civil War, however, the United States returned to a largely isolationist stance. Unlike European powers engaged in colonial competition, America focused on economic expansion and internal development. By the early 20th century, it had become one of the world's largest industrial economies, yet its military remained comparatively modest in size. This balance between industrial strength and military restraint would become one of the defining characteristics of American power. When World War I erupted in 1914, the United States initially stayed neutral. President Woodrow Wilson reflected public opinion when he sought to avoid European entanglements. However, German submarine warfare and shifting geopolitical realities eventually drew America into the conflict in 1917. The U.S. military had to expand rapidly, training millions of soldiers and transporting them across the Atlantic. Although American forces arrived late in the war, their fresh manpower and industrial support helped tilt the balance in favor of the Allies. This experience demonstrated something crucial. When mobilized, the United States could convert its economic strength into military power faster than any other nation. After World War I, however, the country once again retreated into isolationism. The memory of trench warfare and heavy casualties created strong public resistance to foreign conflicts. Military budgets shrank, army ranks fell, equipment modernization slowed. By the late 1930s, despite being an economic giant, the United States ranked far below European powers in standing military strength. Meanwhile, global tensions escalated. In Europe, Nazi Germany expanded aggressively under Adolf Hitler. In Asia, Imperial Japan pursued territorial conquest. By 1939, World War II had begun, yet the United States remained officially neutral. President Woodrow Wilson recognized the growing danger, but public opinion strongly opposed entering another overseas war.
Instead, the United States focused on indirect support through programs like Lend-Lease, providing weapons and supplies to allied nations such as Britain and the Soviet Union. Everything changed on December 7, 1941. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor was a strategic gamble intended to cripple American naval power in the Pacific and secure Japan's expansion across Southeast Asia. The attack destroyed or damaged numerous ships and aircraft, killing more than 2,400 Americans. Yet its long-term effect was the exact opposite of Japan's intention. Rather than weakening the United States, it unified the nation with unprecedented determination. Within days, the United States declared war on Japan, and soon after, Germany and Italy declared war on the United States. The country now faced a global conflict on two major fronts, Europe and the Pacific. The transformation that followed was one of the most extraordinary mobilizations in human history. American industry rapidly converted to wartime production. Automobile factories began manufacturing tanks and aircraft engines. Consumer goods plants shifted to producing weapons and ammunition. Shipyards expanded dramatically, constructing thousands of vessels. Between 1941 and 1945, the United States produced staggering quantities of military equipment, hundreds of thousands of aircraft, tens of thousands of tanks, and millions of firearms. This industrial output not only equipped American forces, but also supplied allied nations across multiple continents. The American military itself expanded from a relatively small peacetime force into a massive global organization. Millions of men and women joined the armed services. Training programs were developed at unprecedented speed. New doctrines were created to integrate air, land, and naval operations. Technological innovation became another defining factor. The United States invested heavily in radar systems, cryptography, long-range bombers, and aircraft carrier warfare. One of the most secretive and consequential projects was the Manhattan Project, which led to the development of atomic weapons. These weapons ultimately played a decisive role in ending the war against Japan in 1945, but they also introduced a new era of strategic military thinking centered around nuclear deterrence. By the end of World War II, the United States had emerged as the world's most powerful military and economic nation. Unlike previous victors in history, however, it did not immediately demobilize completely. Instead, global responsibilities required sustained engagement. The post-war period marked the beginning of the Cold War, a long geopolitical struggle between the United States and the Soviet Union. Rather than direct large-scale battles between the two superpowers, the Cold War was characterized by proxy conflicts, ideological competition, and a constant race for technological superiority. During this period, the United States developed new military doctrines focused on deterrence and rapid response. Nuclear weapons, intercontinental ballistic missiles, and strategic bomber fleets became central components of national defense. Military alliances such as NATO were established to create collective security frameworks across multiple nations. The Korean War in the early 1950s became the first major armed conflict of the Cold War. American forces operating under UN authority fought to repel North Korean and later Chinese advances. The war demonstrated the importance of mobility, air superiority, and coordinated multinational operations. In the 1960s and 1970s, the Vietnam War presented a different kind of challenge. Unlike conventional battles between armies, this conflict involved guerrilla warfare, complex terrain, and political considerations. Although the United States possessed overwhelming technological superiority, the war highlighted the limitations of military power in achieving political objectives without sustained public support. Despite these challenges, American military experience continued to grow. Each conflict led to doctrinal adjustments, technological improvements, and organizational reforms. By the late 19th century, the United States had developed capabilities for precision warfare, using satellite guidance, stealth technology, and advanced intelligence systems. The Gulf War of 1991 demonstrated the effectiveness of these advancements. Coalition forces led by the United States achieved rapid success using precision airstrikes, coordinated ground operations, and real-time surveillance technologies. The conflict showcased a new style of warfare in which speed, accuracy, and information dominance became decisive factors. Following the attacks of September 11, 2001, the United States entered a new phase of military engagement focused on counterterrorism and unconventional warfare. Operations in Afghanistan and Iraq involved complex missions ranging from combat operations to nation-building efforts. These experiences further expanded the operational scope and global reach of American military forces.